Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. George Grisham here, speaking about the Dania's history, the history of Valencia, of Aragon, 15th century. Well, we are actually in the June 1st. This is the new stage in the confinement, and there's lots of work going out. I do apologize for some noises outside. But anyway, 15th century, the fall of Constantinople, the end of medieval times, of the whole era, 1492. Discovery of the New World, although people didn't know about the New World. So we're going to talk about the dynasty of Trastamara, the Borgia Popes, our Dania with the family of Sandoval Rojas, and about the golden age of Valencian literature. But we'll do it in two parts. The first part is more general, more geographical, political one. So what we're having in 15th century? 15th century is an interesting century. For Aragon, it's the zenith. It's really the top of its development. Aragon, during the 15th century, the years of 1400s, is called thalassocracy, an empire at sea, a state with primarily maritime realms. Because on the peninsula, Aragon is, the crown of Aragon is the Kingdom of Aragon, the Kingdom of Valencia, the County of Barcelona. Well, we used to have the Kingdom of Mallorca, but it's back into Aragon itself, or rather Valencia itself, okay? And then we, at different times, we had the Kingdom of Sicily, the Kingdom of Naples, of Sardinia. We even had Athens. So really, the development of Aragon went like this. Up till 15th, growth, 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 and then the 16th was already a less important, a smaller part of the huge empire. Why? Because the vectors changed. Aragon was moving westwards. Do apologize? I always mix them up. Aragon was moving eastwards, towards Italy, towards Levante, in the Mediterranean. And that was understandable because we had the Great Silk Route. See this map? It even says that the Great Silk Route started in Valencia and finished in China. Oh, of course, it was vice versa, but it was passing through Mediterranean. And the Turks, the Muslims actually, were normal middlemen. And unfortunately, the fall of Constantinople in 1453 changed it all. Yes, it was the end of Middle Ages. It started a huge migration, first of all, of Greeks who lived in Constantinople. They came to Italy and Spain and reignited Renaissance. But on the other hand, it meant trade disruption and meant that people, first of all, Spain, started looking for other vectors. And then came the 16th century, when Spain started moving eastwards, but via west and south. This is an interesting map. It is the map of the United Empire, Spain and Portugal, which only existed between 1580 and 1640, so 100, 150 years from the times we're talking about. The most important thing is that Aragon here was moving eastwards in Mediterranean. The Spanish Empire in the 16th century was moving west and south. That's why Aragon came to its highest point of development in the 15th century and gradually started losing its importance. 15th century, yes, we had two crowns, Crown of Aragon and Crown of Castile. We had two dynasties. 15th century started with Aragon having Aragonese Barcelonian dynasty. But unfortunately, Martin I, the human, he loved arts, he was a churchman, died childless, 1410. I read somewhere that he died from laughter. That was only in one place. I can't find this source again. But anyway, see, he died in 1410. The next king, Fernando I, or Ferdinand I, already came from different dynasty, Trastamara, only in 1412. We're going to speak why these 2 years took place. Then his two sons, Alfonso V, magnanimous. But he mostly lived in Italy, on the islands, from 1432. So Juan, or John, Juan I of Navarra, and then John II of Aragon. El Grande, the Great, because he was actually the actual king between 1432 and 1479 for what, 47 years. That's why, of course, he was the Great. So John II, Juan II of Aragon was the father of the famous Ferdinand II. Castilla had, well, lesser number of kings and also one pretendant, La Beltraneja, who of course wanted to rule instead of Isabel. So gradually, it all settled down in the marriage between Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabel I of Castilla in 1469, which was, by the way, it was not a very open wedding. It was a secret one. But anyway, we'll come to it gradually. So at the end of the 15th century, we had the same dynasty, Trastámara, in Castilla and in Aragon. Aragon and Castilla, although the pair were married, they were still different countries, different crowns. So what happened in Caspe? Oof, an absolutely unbelievable thing, the election of a king. I think in the last 2000 years of Spanish history, it only happened once, 1412. There were 6 pretendants, including our very own Don Alfonso de Aragon, the old one, who you remember was the Duke of Gandia, and who owned Dénia as well, and so on and so forth. But he actually died during the proceedings in March 1412. So what they did, they elected 9 electors, 3 from each part of the crown, from Valencia, from Aragon, and from Barcelona. And these were not ordinary people, but they were not nobility. They were not royalty. For instance, our delegation to Caspe was San Vicente Ferrer of Valencia, the future patron saint of Valencia. His brother, of course, also a clergyman and a lawyer. And the same was true for the 2 other delegations from Aragon and from Barcelona. So 9 of them got together in Caspe, a little town more or less equidistant from the 3 centers of power, spent there 2 or 3 months, and out of 6 candidates, actually chose 1. How did they choose? It was not an easy choice, because there was a gentleman called Papa Luna. No, he wasn't a lunatic. He was the last anti-pope, Benedict XIII, died in 1423, lived in Peniscola. If you go to Peniscola, his beautiful castle is there. So Luna, who were a very, very powerful family. Actually, Maria de Luna was the first wife of Martin I, I'm sorry about this, Martin I, the regent of Aragon she was. So Luna and Trastámara made a pact. They were 2 richest, the 2 most important families, both in Castilla and in Aragon. Benedict XIII, the anti-pope, was saying that he was fighting por un rey rico y poderoso para liderar la recuperación de la plenitud perdida, that he was supporting a future powerful and rich king to recover the lost plenitude of the country of Aragon. So after this compromise, after the sort of parliament, 9 people deliberating for 3 months whom to choose, and there were some even wars and riots meanwhile, before and after, they've chosen Ferdinand I. That was how the dynasty of Trastámara started reigning, not only Castilla, but also Aragon. 28th June 1412. A very interesting, a very historic event in the history of the peninsula, in the history of the whole Europe. They've chosen a new king in Aragon, the King Ferdinand I. El Justo, the just one. El Honesto, the honest one. He would only reign for 4 years, till 1416, but you remember his sons, Alfonso V, the magnanimous, his son, John Juan I of Navarre and the second of Aragon, and his, what is most important, his grandson, Ferdinand II, would continue to be strong leaders for both Aragon and Spain. Now, there was one little byproduct of Caspia, and that was for our Dania. Dania got a new master, actually 19 years after the compromise of Caspia, but still it was a very important event for Dania because the family of Sandoval Rojas came to own Dania for the next 200 years. Yeah, Dania altogether became private. It went out of royals' hands, of the hands of royalty, into private hands of counts and marquesses, altogether for 373 years. First Sandoval and Rojas, and then Medinaceli. Why? Because Mr. Don Diego Gomez de Sandoval y Rojas actually was brought up in the same room with the future Ferdinand I of Aragon. So that was the connection of Caspia. Our three main persons, Don Alfonso the Vieja, the old one from the previous chapter, and Don Diego de Gomel and the King Ferdinand I got together, and as a byproduct, Dénia, Javia, Xavia, all the other territory was actually giving away as a gift in favor of Don Diego Gomez de Sandoval Rojas. And he gave Dénia its coat of arms. We still use it now. This castle down there, this tower down there, is rather a modern development only 20 years ago. It comes from Valencia. So the historic coat of arms is really the crown and two fields. One is it's called the beam, and it comes from the family of Sandovals, who were actually counting their history from the 9th century of our era, of course. It was called the Viga, and allegedly there was a king of Asturias or Leon who was walking up the Viga, which was a very, very, very broad walk somewhere in the mountains. He lost his balance and he cried Sancho Valme to his, well, you know, supporter who was passing, who was walking behind him. Sancho gave him his hand, steadied up the king, and died himself. Sancho Valme somehow transformed into Sandoval. So Sandoval, a very, very old family. And Rojas was also a very important family. They were bishops and so forth with their 5 stars. So this particular coat of arms became the one of Dania in 1431. So we've been using it for the last, what, 570 years, a lot. And then during the same century, at the end of the same century, already the 5th count, also of course Sandoval y Rojas, also Don Diego Gomez, but he was de Sandoval y Rojas y Castilla. He was fighting very gallantly during the siege of Malaga, and he became a marquess. So the Danian lands became a marquisate. Actually, very few of Sandoval and Rojas were coming over to Dania. They had lugarteniente. Lugarteniente is like a representative or a, you know, a deputy. And these lugartenientes, also coming from, of course, Castilla, were running Dania, Javia, and so forth. Yes, this is very important, that Dania was given away to Castilian people. See what they were saying. Uno de los muchos nobles castellanos que se introdujeron en el reino de Valencia para defender con las armas la candidatura. So Sandoval y Rojas was one of the representatives of Castilian families who, with the arms in their hands, came to the Kingdom of Valencia to defend the claim of Fernando de Antequera, the future Ferdinand I, for the throne of Aragon. So Caspia, was it that democratic? Was it not? In Castilla, our Diego de Gomez de Sandoval y Rojas was Mariscal, the Marshal, and Adelantado Mayor de Castilla, so the highest positions he reached. And as a gift, 19 years after helping his friend, his childhood friend, to get to the throne of Aragon, he was given Dania. Not just Dania. Let's first read out Chabas. Chabas is our historian. He was writing in a very interesting style, in a very sometimes humoristic, sometimes poetic style. Look what he was writing. Don Diego, we're talking about the first Sandoval y Rojas, of course, who got Dania in 1431. Don Diego was a noble knight, a noble caballero, big in body, stout with high shoulders, small eyes, smart and fearless, but careless, at home and on the farm, not the best manager. You can't call him an open-minded person. He liked guns and horses, not people, obviously. A caballero with a healthy mind and not arrogant, though. Well, very interesting description. Why not? What is important? Dénia, Xàbia, all other places around were passed over to Sandoval Rojas. The document is still kept intact. Would you imagine? Yeah. What is this? 550 years after that. And for Valencian, it didn't pass very nicely. That a high-ranking Castilian family has come to control one of the most important territories of the Kingdom of Valencia, that is Dania. It was not a good sign for Valencians. See? Because they really received lots of rights. I mean, the family of Sandoval and Rojas. For instance, only Dénia and Xàbia were to be used as ports for discharging the goods and so on and so forth. It was very interesting that during this century, there was a saying, Dénia is the key to the Kingdom of Valencia, whilst Valencia is the mother and the head of the Kingdom of Valencia. That was the importance of Dénia. Dénia was given away to a Castilian family of Sandoval and Rojas, and there are just a few signs of their activities in the 15th century. First of all, congratulate us, me, my wife, and our friend. We finally seen our book published. This is the first and probably the most beautiful book on the history of Dénia. We're not being too modest, but it's really beautiful, and it covers the whole of 2,600 years of the history of Dénia. We just seen it from printers 2 days ago. And here, what I'm talking to you, there's 12 chapters, and we're going exactly by 12 chapters. The only thing, a chapter here is 5-6 pages, and a chapter with us is usually about 2 parts of a talk, which is about, well, an hour long. I do apologize about this. What we did here was to make our own map. You can see it there as well. That was my invention 2 or 3 years ago, because I decided to show the history of the castle of Dénia in colors. That was a very simple invention. You can see the map here. The yellow colors are the Arab period, which was mostly years between 11th and 13th century. The red are mostly 15th century. What we're talking about? The red ones. And they were mostly the square towers, because artillery was not that developed and you could build square towers. The most important one is the council tower, which is just standing up above the very center of Dénia. It was finished in 1500. The other one is the powder tower on the other side of the castle, on the northern side of the castle. And what is very important, we had graffiti here. They were fantastic graffitis. They existed in 15th century, and they were depicting ships, hundreds of ships which were coming to the harbor of Dénia. And they were actually like scribblings on the wall. And unfortunately, they're disappearing now because of pollution and everything. I saw them a couple of years ago. There are only 3 or 4 of them left. But that was the oldest artifact, the oldest thing actually written by human hands in Dénia, coming from 13th, 14th century. A pity, a pity, a pity. What can you do? And the other structure is called Ermita de Santa Lucia. There were 3 or 4 ermitas, i.e. little chapels for monks who lived here during the Reconquista. And this ermita is actually that way, 300 meters that way. It is an Orthodox church now, run by a very nice Bulgarian priest, Father Alexander. And it is called Ermita Santa Lucia. They started building it during the same 15th century. So at least we have some structures in Dénia which date back to the years when Sandoval and Rojas became our masters, the masters of Dénia, in 1431. Now we are finishing with this century. Chabas was writing again in his usual style that we have come now to an epoch in which the history of our city, of the kingdom, of the whole Spain, of the whole world took a new shape. The discovery of Christopher Columbus of the New World, and the siege and then the taking of Granada, the last Muslim kingdom in the peninsula. So what happened? We're coming back to the royal couple. Ferdinand II, 1479, he became the king in the crown of Aragon, and Isabel I. In 1474, she became the queen in the crown of Castilla. Remember, their wedding was 1469, 5-10 years prior to them becoming king and queen. Interesting, isn't it? And you know what? Each of them became king and queen in her own path. Ferdinand did not become the king of Castilla, although he was hoping for this. Isabel did not become the queen of Aragon. No, they were reigning their own paths, but they created their own logo. You know, logos were very important in those times. And the logo said the yoke and the bundle. The bundle is fascia. F for Ferdinand. Yoke, Yuga. Isabel, the name Isabel started with Y at that time. And it was said, tanto molto molto tanto, Isabel como Fernando. Isabel and Ferdinand are one and the same. That was for very simple people who, when seeing the yoke and the fascia, would understand that the kings, although they're running two different kingdoms, Spain at that time is not united. It would unite only by 1516. Still, they were one and the same. Tanta molto molto tanta, Isabel como Fernando. That was coming from Gordian knot. That it was very much the same, to cut it or to untie it. So this tanto molto molto tanta is probably one of the things you can remember about this couple who were called the Reyes Católicos, the Catholic kings, in 1496 by the very Spanish Pope Alexander VI of Borja-Borgia. The last page in this part of presentation about Christopher Columb, or Christophorus Columbus, born in 1451, died 1506, only 55 years. Nobody understands where he was from. Well, from Genoa, yes, but there is a Catalan theory, a Jewish theory, a Galician one, a Portuguese. He was speaking a very strange language, which was Jerga Levantesca, or Jerga Levantesca, Argo, a dialect, where Spanish and Italian words were mixed very much the same. He was developing his project of moving west to go east, starting from 1481. Got misprinted here. He was in Spain from 1486. So it took him about 6 years to persuade Isabel, not Ferdinand, but Isabel. But you remember, 1492, we just missed it, but once again, January, the siege of Granada, the last Muslim kingdom on the territory of the peninsula, disappears. Much expulsion of Jews. Quite a lot of money goes to the coffers of Isabel. And then finally, August, Isabel finances the expedition of Columbus. That was called Las Capitalizaciones de Santa Fe. Actually, they were signed in April already, in 1492. The expedition took off in August. And Christopher Columbus was named the admiral, the viceroy, the governor general of the new lands to be discovered. And he was to get diezmo, 1/10 of all income. And it was on 12th of October that his seamen saw the glimpse of land, landed. Of course, it was an island, a Caribbean island. And we now celebrate this as Dia de Hispanidad, de la Hispanidad, the day of everything Spanish. And it is the main national holiday of Spain. And what happened then? What happened then? There were only two powers which really could be called world powers, Portugal and Spain at that time. And again, the same Pope, Alejandro VI, our one from Xàtiva here, from Spain, from Valencia, he reached an agreement which was signed in Tordesillas, a small town not far from Valladolid and Madrid in 1494, whereby the world was divided. There was a division line 350 leagues west from Cape Verde Islands. Somewhere here, everything to the east, Portuguese, everything to the west, Spanish. That's why if you see the line would have been here, Brazil turned out to be Portuguese. You know, Brazil is the only country in South America, in Latin America, to actually speak Portuguese. Why? Because of the Treaty of Tordesillas of 1494. And that was, of course, the result of the travels of Christopher Columbus, who did 4 voyages to America between 92 and 1502. 1506, he died in Valladolid. By the way, he was not leaving, his expeditions were not leaving from Sevilla, but rather from the smaller ports across, along the coast there around the Cadiz area. The first one from Palos de la Frontera, the second from Santa Puerta de Maria, and so forth. So if you go there, there are different ports where you would see the names of Columbus and also of Magellan, because Magellan's 1516 worldwide travel also took from there. Again, from Castilla. So Castile became much more important than Aragon from the strategic point of view. Castilla was the one who paid for the conquista of the New World, exactly Isabel I, and that was there where the money were coming. And that presupposed the gradual, reduction of the importance, unfortunately, of the importance of Aragon and of our Valencia. This is it. This is the 15th century as far as politics and geography is concerned. The second part would be about literature, Gothic structures, and so forth. Thank you very much for your attention. George Grisham was with you with the talks about Dania. Goodbye.